Welcome to your essential business briefing. I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up, a cruel summer for Europe's tourism industry, but did local visitors help make up for a lack of international travellers? Will the French government's plan to boost the economy help struggling small businesses? We'll get the views of one Paris-based entrepreneur. And champagne producers try to keep a cork in this year's grape harvest as demand for the sparkling wine loses its fizz. First, it's been a difficult summer for Europe's travel sector. Visitor numbers to many popular destinations are way down. Non-essential travel to most European countries still isn't possible for many parts of the world, including the United States, one of the most lucrative markets for visitors. Even within Europe, the rules around quarantining are constantly evolving. The European Commission wants the regulations to be coordinated across the EU, an initiative supported by airlines, among others. So just how bad was the summer for Europe's tourism industry, and what hopes are there for a recovery? Kate Moody's here with more. Kate, first of all, tell us what travel did happen this summer.
Well, Stephen, within Europe, air travel was still about half of last summer's level. The European Travel Commission says the occupancy rate in the bloc's hotels was just over 26% in July. That's two-thirds lower than the same month last year. The industry group says hotel bookings did begin to recover in June, and as you can see, France and Greece fared better than Italy and Spain. International travel did grind to a near halt in April and May, and the number of foreign visitors remains much lower than usual. In July, just 2.5 million international tourists visited Spain. That's a 75% drop from last year. Italy saw 65% fewer, while airports in Paris reported a 77% drop in arrivals in July.
Now, one trend we did see was the so-called staycation, people holidaying at home, particularly here in France.
Yeah, one study said that the majority of French families were indeed planning to spend their summer holidays in France. The government said overall tourism was down by about a quarter. That's a much stronger season than most of its neighbours had. The downside is that the French don't spend as much money as international visitors. Tourist spending was down by about 50%. And Paris, the most visited city in the world, largely missed out on that trend. Nearly half of the capital's hotels remained closed, and the Palace of Versailles and the Louvre Museum hosted just a fraction of their usual summertime visitors.
So do we have any idea how much these economies have lost as a result?
We have a lot of different estimates. The World Travel and Tourism Council puts France's losses at around 48 billion euros, Spain at around 40 billion, and Italy nearly 37. Europe's tourism industry could shed huge numbers of jobs, depending on how the pandemic plays out, between 14 and nearly 30 million. More coordination on travel rules across the EU could help the industry, but everything now really depends on how the health situation evolves.
OK, Kate Moody, thank you very much for that. Now, the French government has unveiled its €100 billion plan to help the economy recover. It includes some 40 billion for small businesses, many of which have been struggling in recent months. Back in April, I spoke to Christian Osburn, who runs two businesses in Paris, a café and a bike tour company.
It seems that every day you go through the whole kind of range of emotions, from being thankful for all the help that that the government and our employees and my business partner have kind of banded together. You get encouraged, but then you get angry. Sometimes you get a bit depressed as well, not knowing. I think that's the hardest part, is just not knowing the length of the shutdown.
And Christian is back in studio with us now. Christian, thanks very much for coming in. The shutdown that you were talking about there lasted for over 2 months in the end. What have things been like since lockdown has been lifted for you?
Since lockdown, we've tried to act quickly on our feet. It was a shock when COVID started originally, especially at the start of the summer and the spring. That's always the big time of tourism, and really for our two companies, the start of our season. So we really had to think quickly on how to make something out of this kind of unusual situation.
And so since then, you've been able to reopen the cafe. How are you still seeing the same number of customers? Do people come back? And what about the tour company?
Well, cafe-wise, it's been good with people living in Paris. On a local level, the city has allowed seating terraces to be expanded massively, which has really helped us because I feel calmer and more sure sitting outside during the COVID period. So that's, I think, attracted people. However, we're in a touristic spot in Paris. So, that 30% of extra tourism is not there. So yes, so we're probably at about, I'd say about half, about 50% with the Café, as opposed to a normal kind of summer.
But then the tour company, I imagine, has been impacted much further.
Yes, the tour company really, we've had 3-4%. We've had some of our neighboring countries, some Germans, some Dutch, some Belgians, a few British thrown in, but those Americans and Australians, Irish, New Zealanders, we haven't seen this summer, and that's really the bulk of our bike tour company.
We were talking earlier in the program about the staycation effect of more people holidaying at home. Were there more French people willing to take up bike tours of Paris?
Yes, we saw more French people. Now with Paris being a great city for cycling, a lot of bike rentals, hiring bikes, which was a nice thing for our company. And we kind of adapted to do some more long-term rentals. So people would rent for a month or a few months of people living here. They didn't want to maybe catch the metro like they had been used to doing. So they'd hire a bike. So that's been a nice little addition for us.
When you look at your full year for both businesses, I'm sure you've had to do financial projections. How are you expecting it to compare to 2019?
So Café-wise, we'll be, I think, at about 40% of our normal kind of year. Tour-wise, 3 to 4%. So
Wow.
It's really been just a complete collapse on that front. In 2020.
And you really, to be able to see that business recover, you really need travel to resume, which of course we don't know is going to happen for the moment.
Yes, we definitely need that confidence to resume, and obviously governments to open borders. And we've heard from a lot of travelers, it's not so much COVID that's scaring them, it's all the other regulations surrounding it, being quarantined, flights canceled, those kind of things. It's an equal kind of fear for travelers, it seems.
The French government's promising an awful lot of help for small businesses. Was there anything in that 100 billion euro recovery package that you thought could help your businesses?
One part is kind of the temporary unemployment, the chômage partiel that they talk about, that employees can be on unemployment temporarily, and you could bring them back as you need them. So you could bring them back half-time, a quarter time, and have them working as things get busier. So that's been a nice thing that the government's done. Secondly, there are interest-free loans that are available that we'll probably look into later in the year as well. So I think that'll be a good thing too.
Can you make any sort of have you any hopes as to when you might see things returning to normal? Are you kind of putting a pin in it and saying we can survive until this long, or is that even a question you're asking at this time?
Well, it's interesting, when all this started back in March, we thought, oh, surely by September, we'll start to see tourism resume. But unfortunately, our major markets for our tours haven't come back, and things haven't gotten much better in those markets. So I think we're looking probably at 2021 in the summer before tourism really gets back to where it is.
And are you happy that with the help that's in place that you'll be able to keep the business going that long?
I think so, and some of the kind of adjustments we've made, I think, could help as well. We're trying to focus more as well on the Parisians, on the people living in Paris, with kind of all of our services that we offer to try to capture the market that's here, that doesn't have to come from abroad. So.
Okay, we'll wish you the best of luck with it anyway. Christian Osburn from Bike About Tours and the Peleton Café, thank you very much for coming in to speak to us. Now, it's been a tough year too for the champagne industry, with weddings and big parties on hold due to the pandemic. Sales of the world-famous sparkling wine have tumbled. Producers are responding by cutting production by up to a third in 2020. Yenna Lee and Noemi Roche report now from the Champagne region.
The last of the harvest in Champagne's vineyards. In a few years, these grapes will be transformed into the famous sparkling wine. But not all of this crop will become champagne. Lower demand due to the pandemic has led to an exceptionally low harvest quota. Pickers are only allowed to cut 8,000 kilos of grapes per hectare, around a fifth less than last year. A decision with drastic consequences for independent winemakers.
On va perdre à peu près 20 000 bouteilles en production. Ce rendement, il est lié aux ventes qui seront faites dans 2 ans et demi, 3 ans. Voilà. C'est là la difficulté en fait. Voilà. Il ne faut pas faire de surproduction, il ne faut pas avoir un manque de bouteilles non plus, il faut trouver le juste milieu. Et là, cette année, c'est vraiment très compliqué de savoir et de prévoir ce qui va se passer dans 3 ans.
Champagne industry representatives decide on a quota every year to avoid a surplus in production. They say 2020's number reflects the drop in champagne sales, estimating that this year only 200 million bottles will be sold, a third less than in 2019. The president of France's largest champagne makers union argues that producers must adapt to the current market.
Dès le moment où on ferme les lieux de consommation, les cafés, les hôtels, les restaurants, des moments où on annule les mariages et les festivals de musique, on consomme moins de champagne. C'est important pour les vignerons de Champagne de maintenir la valeur du produit champagne parce qu'un champagne qui n'est pas cher, ça peut paraître aussi un champagne qui n'est pas bon.
The glass is half full for producers, though. Optimal weather conditions have made 2020's harvest a potential millésime or vintage year, a coveted label for a successful wine.
Well, that's it from us for this week, but you can watch this and previous programmes back on our website, france24.com. And as always, we're on social media for your comments and questions. Until next time, thanks for watching.